Did you ever watch Saturday Night Live back in the 1980s? I know I did. And two of my favorite characters were Hans and Franz. I loved how they would do the pump you up. I thought that was hilarious. And they would always say this other thing. They would say like, listen to me now, but hear me later. And I was thinking about that today because of what I need to tell you guys right now. I have to explain something to you. I'm not sure if you're going to believe me right now. Go do some more research if you don't, but I'm telling you what I got to say is the truth. Here we go. The people that you have listed as beneficiaries on your RSPs, your tax-free savings accounts, and your life insurance plans, okay? They take precedence over anything that you have written in your legal will. Some of you are saying, what? Say, absolutely, yeah. It does not matter what's in the will versus what's on those contracts because of that very reason, that very word, contract. Those are legal contracts that are technically outside of your estate. In fact, when you name someone as a beneficiary, you're doing that so that you can bypass the estate and go directly to them. This is actually considered very, very beneficial because A, it saves about 2% in estate fees, but B, the other thing that it does is it goes directly to them within, say, 2 to 3 weeks, as opposed to being caught up in an estate, which can sometimes take 18 months to 2 years to settle. So people do that on purpose. However, if the wrong person is listed, it's the right person. I don't know how else to put it. This all came up really because there was an article in CBC News this week where there was a gentleman, and his name's Tim Taylor, and sadly, he passed away prematurely at the age of 50 of stomach cancer. And this gentleman was a banker, and he started his RSP right away when he started with the bank. And he amassed $685,000 in there before his passing. Here's the thing though. Mr. Taylor set that up at a very young age when he wasn't married, and he had listed his mom as his beneficiary. Over the next 30 years, he had never actually updated any beneficiary information on that plan. So upon his passing, guess where the money went? If you said his wife, I got bad news for you. His mother was the one that was listed as the beneficiary, and therefore the money went to her. Now, they never wanted this to happen. I don't think Mr. Taylor's mother even wanted this to happen. They even had a clause in their will that was called a Revocation Clause, and it was supposed to say anything that is not laid out exactly in accordance with our wills still must revert back to what the will says. But guess what? Didn't hold up in a court of law. That legal contract that he signed over 30 years ago, that's what held up. Now this is crazy, right? Because sometimes when you're completing an RSP application, maybe you're spending 20 minutes to half an hour on it. Whereas if you've written up a legal will, you know that you spend hours with your lawyer hashing out every single different idea to make sure things go exactly the way you want them to. But it doesn't matter. And that's why it's so important. You have to do this. Contact your advisor and just quite simply ask them, say, can you please remind me of the beneficiary information on all of my policies, on all my life insurance policies, all my RSP plans, all my TFSAs? Who are the named beneficiaries? Make sure they line up with what your will says, okay? This is extremely important if A, you've passed away and remarried, or if you've separated or divorced, or even if you've just had another child. All of these things need to be updated at that time. Now, the good news is it's really easy to do. It's usually only a 1 or 2 page form that has to be filled out, and it can be such a simple fix. But if it's not done, it can cause so much turmoil and pain for the people you leave behind. And I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think anyone wants to think that their passing would leave behind pain and anxiety. But in Mr. Taylor's example, it is what's happened. And it's not just him. This happens on a regular basis, okay? So I brought this up because I want to make sure you understand it. I want to make sure you hear it and you can start to process this information. I've set the link for the CBC article. You'll find it right below this blog, and you can just click on that to read it. Or if you want, I'll also put the links to a couple other places that explain this in greater detail. but you just need to know. Make sure you have your beneficiary information lined up correctly so that it aligns with what you want to happen in your will. That's been a retirement minute for this week. Thanks so much. Just a quick follow-up to the video I did the other day here on Mr. Taylor's estate and making sure that you have your beneficiaries up to date. I realized afterwards that I left a couple gaps in the story where some of you might be filling in the blanks the wrong way. I thought some of you might be thinking after seeing that, well, even though the money's going over to Mr. Taylor's mom, it's probably not that big a deal. I mean, she understands and she's going to give that money back to his widow, Mrs. Taylor. Well, that may be true, but it's important to know that technically, in the legal sense, she doesn't have to do that. If she wants to do it, and I believe in this instance she does, she can do so. However, technically, no one has to do that. So that's another reason why it's important to make sure you have that beneficiary information up to date. The second thing, and this is the bigger one and way more important, you need to understand that whenever money is transferred out to anyone from an RSP other than your spouse. So if you pass that money on after your passing to anyone other than your spouse, so your kids or your favorite charity or anything else, that money then is considered income in your final year of life, and it is subject to taxation. So in this instance, Mr. Taylor's income was increased in his final year by $685,000. That was how much was in his RSP at the time. That pushed him up to the highest tax bracket possible in Canada. So he was now subject to 54% taxation. So what does that mean? Well, that means that even in this instance where Mr. Taylor's mom will most likely give the money back to Mr. Taylor's widow, Miss Taylor, it's only going to be $315,000 now. $369,000 of it went to taxes. This is just, might be blowing your mind a little bit. I know this is a very difficult concept to understand, but that's why it's so important. Again, this can cause so much damage if not done properly, but if handled well, just take the time to make sure your beneficiaries are up to date and set up properly, and this can all be addressed. I hope this opens your eyes. I hope this helps you to understand. Please email me any questions you have. Call me anytime. I'm happy to explain this in greater length. But for now, that's a retirement minute. Thanks again for tuning in.